In Iceland, most people are born into and grow up in the Lutheran state church. Small wooden churches are dotted around the extremities of the rural landscape. And in Reykjavik, the dominant, soaring symbol that follows you everywhere is the tower of Hallgrímskirkja. Now, in every church, there's at least an organ or a piano. And in many suburban churches, you have both a majestic pipe organ and a grand piano. The church is at the heart of community, and it's a place of music, song, and often even secular gatherings. I'm Helen Shaw, and this is Mother's Blood, Sisters' Songs, a journey from Ireland to Iceland, exploring what connects us, from gender to genetics, from story to song. Now, in one church in a Reykjavik suburb, Linda Buckley and I met up with musician and performer Arnhildur Valgarðsdóttir, or Adda for short, just before she was getting ready to lead choir practice for a wedding. Now, Adda is an eclectic, colourful and joyous performer and singer. She was at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival with a musical show around the Icelandic Sagas. And in this beautiful modern church, she chatted, seated at a grand piano, about music in Iceland, the role of the church and choirs, while peppering our conversation with song.
My name is Arnhildur Valgarðsdóttir, and I am an organist in this church, Fella og Hólakirkja. And I teach piano, and I accompany people singing, and I play lots and lots of funerals and weddings and sort of overall musician kind of work. And I sing, and I conduct choirs, and I play the clarinet a little bit. Yeah. But my main job is here, I suppose.
So Adda, I was very interested in the fact that you have classical training, but then you're also interested in folk music and folk song, and sort of how are those strands part of your life, or how did they kind of come together?
I suppose if you're Icelandic, you're kind of born with those songs. I suppose like everywhere, isn't it? So I mean, I grew up, you get it with the mother's milk, as it were. So I just grew up with lots and lots of Icelandic folk songs. I think everybody does. Well, my generation, I don't know about people younger than I am. I don't know about people who are like 12 or 13. I doubt it. I don't know if they still, are born with this heritage, but I was, and everybody my age and older.
And do you have particular ones that you were drawn towards when you were younger?
There is this one that everybody knows that is just really, really sad. I mean, I think actually they're almost all very sad. Are folk songs normally sad? Yes, they are. So,
And what is that about? It's beautiful.
Oh, it is very sad. It was probably originally a bit of a folk song, and then it's been arranged. And it's this man and his wife, and they were made outlaw because, well, the man was a thief. Everybody knows his story. So he stole a bit of cheese, I think, and so he was made outlaw. Well, outlaw from human society, as it were. And they escaped to the mountains, and his wife as well, Halla. And so they sang this to the children. And some say that because they had to, sometimes they couldn't keep the children, so they had to leave them outside to die of exposure. And this was done in Iceland. It was done a lot before it became Christian in 1000. And then it became forbidden, but people still did it. And I mean, a lot of children, I mean, this is going to sound really heartless, but it just happened. And a lot of children died. I mean, until 1910 or 20, there would be 20 children and like 5, 6, 7, 8 of them would die as a rule. So there's some say that she sang this song to her babies before she just left them to die.
I just wanted to ask you about your show as well, because you love to illustrate aspects of the sagas through song and through music. I mean, is there a lot of reference to music in the sagas, or is it more that you're illustrating aspects of the sagas through song?
Yeah, it's more that I put into the sagas songs that don't really belong there. I don't do it maybe very rationally. It's more like the feeling. It's like when Gunnar Arnhildurs meets Hallgerður in Njála for the first time. And then I put in this song called Blástjarnan, the blue star. Blástjarnan, þó skart í skær, hún skálei framar pína, sjón mína, því aðrar eru tvær, mér tindra miklunar og undir svögna brún skína. So just put this love song into when Gunnar meets Hallgerður. And it says in the Njála that it's almost described as not love, but lust. It was like lust at first sight, which it probably was. Yeah.
And what made you decide to put together a show like this, where you're really bringing this to life in a very real way?
It was like my brain had decided it before me. All of a sudden, I was sitting in this cafe in March, and I had been sort of dreaming about doing the Edinburgh, Fringe for like a few years. And then I was sitting in this cafe, and all of a sudden my brain just told me that I was going to do it. You know, when your brain has decided something and then sort of informs you, and you're like, okay. So of course I obeyed my brain. I lived in Glasgow for 5 years, so, well, Scotland is like home to me almost. Well, the traditional Icelandic music is just parallel fifths, which is, it's just really weird. No, 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 no. And it's just, it doesn't even sound that nice, does it?
Why do you think that parallel fifths are used? Because they have this really sort of open harmony, almost like open strings on a fiddle or something. And did you grow up hearing the sagas? I mean, my mother and my father, they were always separated, but they both, my father is dead, my mother's alive, both completely obsessed with the sagas. And they just talk about the characters as if they're just like, uncles and aunts or something, or grandparents. So, they really feel as if they know everyone. And I've had many, many discussions with them separately about why this particular person did this and not that, and so yes. And it seems to me here in Iceland that there's quite an openness and an inclusivity about bringing genres of music together, so classical and folk and electronic and acoustic and all these things. It seems, do you feel that? Oh yeah, well yes, exactly. And I think a lot of young people, just everybody is allowed to experiment, ad-lib, with everything. Yes. I don't really think much about genres, but I mean, of course, it's all just music. And maybe tell me a little bit about the choral tradition that you're part of as well, and of course you're a choral director here. Yes. And some of the choirs, they come from certain bits of countryside. Some of them, and they've been around for maybe 50, 60 years, maybe a little more, and some of them will come from North Iceland, some from the west, some from east, etc. But what's happening now is that the members of the choir are growing older now, and it's very hard to get younger people into the choirs. And maybe it was just, the transition, the very, very sudden transition from the countryside and to Reykjavik. And then members, people from the countryside who joined the choirs, they were just trying to hold on to the roots of their farms, the countryside where they had been living.
So maybe it was a necessary transition for people. Because I mean, those choirs that are bound to areas, they usually always have their own songs about the area where they come from. Because there's a bit of sorrow involved, because the countryside isn't at all what it used to be. I mean, most of the farms are just like tourists, you know, house tourists, etc. So the sort of countryside that we sing about 100 years ago, 150 years ago, it only exists in the songs now, and it doesn't really exist at all.
There's a poignancy to that, I suppose, isn't there?
Yes, and I think that's why those people join the choirs. And they say, oh, I am in the choir, you know, from Snæfellsnes or Arnhildurs or whatever. So they're bringing their countryside with them in the form of a choir.
And there's such a strong tradition of female choirs here too, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Yes, I've been very much involved with female choirs for years.
And maybe could you tell us a little bit about the repertoire that you might be interested in terms of Icelandic music?
Well, I mean, there is, for instance, Bára. I mean, Bára is just absolutely brilliant, and everybody loves singing her, you know, her work. I was just actually last night rehearsing one with my church choir. Do you know it?
I don't actually.
No. So it's quite difficult because it has all these offbeats. And the tenors would always be late. Well, the churches are very, very much used also for concerts all the time. So there will be lots of concerts, and people will be quite liberal. I mean, you can sing and say pretty much anything you want, kind of thing, you know. I play lots of funerals. You can do anything at a funeral. I mean, on occasions you can put in a CD with Pink Floyd or whatever, or Coldplay or anything, and it just anything goes. But I've played several funerals where there was nothing Christian at all, and that's fine with most of the, yes. So everybody is born into this church. I mean, the church is hardly ever full unless there's a funeral. So sometimes we just have like 20 people in a service. But we had these romantic composers in the 19th century. You know, lots of romantic poetry in the 19th century. And also that was a way of giving Icelanders just like romantic, I can't say nationalism because that sounds really bad, you know. Because we were not independent. We only were independent 1944. So we had all these brilliant poets who wrote this wonderful, wonderful poetry, very, very romantic. Beautiful countryside and the cows and the sheep and the nice people everywhere. Well, very, very glorified, obviously. But a lot of that has been put to music, and everybody loves that.
I wanted to ask you actually about the pull to home again, because of course you studied elsewhere and then you came back to Iceland. And what was it that kind of brought you back?
It was lack of money. I didn't feel any pull at all. I wanted to stay in Scotland. I had no interest in coming back here. I'm sorry.
Why do you think there's such a draw to come here as creatives and artists?
I do understand that. It's an extremely vibrant, it's just in our blood. Reading is very, very much in our blood, and music is also very much in our blood. Icelanders are just all completely hyperactive. I'm like everybody, and we always have to have lots of projects going on. I have like millions, and just when I'm talking to you now, I'm secretly thinking of all my projects and whether, oh yes, oh I could do this, I could do that, and we're all like that. And we always have to do stuff all the time. And I mean, all the concerts in Reykjavik is ridiculous. And in the countryside, you come to a little tiny, crummy, crappy village in the countryside with like 300 people, and you'll have like 5 brilliant artists, you'll have like 20 singers, you'll have lots and lots of actresses and actors. I mean, some may be like amateur people, but they will be putting on shows, doing concerts, writing poetry, painting pictures, and this will be everywhere. So I don't know. I really don't know why we do this.
Actually, I mean, I really felt the first time that I came here that every second person I met were in a band, or they were painters, or they were...
Like that. It is like that, yeah.
And maybe tell us a little bit about some of the things that have happened in this church, because you were talking about Björk is recorded here, so it's obviously very open to that.
The church? Oh, of course, yes, there are people recording it all the time. Of course.
Would you have a song for us, as we would say in Ireland? Would you have a song for us?
Oh, I have, yes, okay. Lullaby. Oh, it's actually by female composer Jorunn Viðar, who is grandmother to my half-sister, but not related to me. She died just like 5 years ago, approximately. Yeah. So she was probably the first female composer who was recognized properly. And she did this song to this folk lyrics, Lullaby. And I will pretend to be asleep, but I'm awake.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
fantastic.
Of course.
Yeah.
And that's Adda, Arnhildur Valgarðsdóttir, an extraordinary and beguiling woman of music. And you can see a short video of her performance in the church on our website, mothersbloodsistersongs.com. Thanks for listening.